I trust that you've also enjoyed a day of prayer and praise. So let's get higher together. Oh man, the Charlottesville trial content is unmatched. Says God close my eyes on Twitter. So a lot of testimony here from Samantha Froelich. So she's the Samantha who was all over Nightline and in that book about the alt-right. So she's been interviewed in many different places. And I mean, moderately attractive young woman, but a 5 in the real world is like a 10 in the alt-right world, because the alt-right does not attract many Sheilas. So, not that, I mean, I don't judge women on their looks. Okay, so God forbid, God forbid. But okay, here we go. All right. So Samantha Froelich there. She was Eli Mosley's girlfriend, and she got with Richard Spencer. And so she's been talking what it's like to be part of the alt-right. So former far-right extremists testified about how Unite the Right rally organizers plan for a racial holy war. Blessings. Come on, guys. Prayer and praise. Let's get higher together. Get higher. Get higher. Okay, she overheard white nationalists discussing right-wing death squads. Well, guess what? If you go to Israel, you will hear Jews talking about death to the Arabs. Now, for every Jew who chants death to the Arabs, how many do you think go out and commit an act of criminal violence? Like fewer than 1 in 10,000. So for every alt-right person who talks about alt-right death squads, how many do you think go out and commit a criminal act of violence? Fewer than 1 in 10,000. All right. So having fantasies about the deaths of your enemies is not unusual, and it's not necessarily dangerous. There's no inherent connection between hate speech and violence, criminal violence. So you can find all the hate speech you want in the Bible, but 99.999% of people who read and revere the Bible don't go out and commit acts of criminal violence. So there's no inherent connection between hate speech and violence. So for those who talk about right-wing death squads, 99.999% of them never go out and commit criminal violence. So Laponius's crush Deborah Lipstadt is on the witness stand tomorrow in Charlottesville. How exciting is that? And they discuss the legality of using cars as weapons against counter-protesters. It would be weird if they didn't talk about using cars as weapons. So particularly in America, particularly since the Rodney King and the LA riots, when you had that truck driver who got beaten to a pulp in South Central, anyone who's driving in a car likely to be surrounded by protesters has thought about what's the legality here, what are my obligations, and should I just allow myself to get pounded and have concrete smashed against my skull, or do I have any options in self-defense? So there's nothing inherently criminal or dangerous about discussing the legality of using cars as weapons against counter-protesters in and of itself. Now, you put it within a context of people, they're eager to commit criminal violence, and sure, I can see how that could be one data point that you can make a case. So this is a civil trial in Charlottesville. I've been sued for libel 5 times, and it's no fun because I lost some sleep over it. You never know who might come out of the woodwork, and you might have forgotten some indiscretion or some gross exaggeration or some cringe boasting that you've done that someone then brings out in a trial, and you can look really, really bad. So Here's what's on tap at the Charlottesville trial today: right-wing death squads and racial holy war, the OK hand gesture, and see Kyle. What a fancy way of talking about see Kyle. Imagine, if you will, Mr. Ford, Deborah Lipstadt and Roberta Kaplan in the same room. It's almost too much for me. I'm in love, bro. So former extremist Samantha, don't think she was ever particularly extreme, gave the jury a crash course on white supremacist terminology and codes. Well, guess what? Traditional Jews have their own terminology and codes, and some of it, if you're not a traditional Jew, you would find shocking and appalling, if not downright satanic. We all find other insular in-groups, particularly other religions, frightening, weird at best, satanic at worst. So she provided frightening insight to one of the alt-right groups being sued in federal court as the Unite the Right civil trial in Charlottesville continued into a second week. So many highlights. So Samantha says that she had a sexual relationship with Richard Spencer. He was willing to make an army for Richard, Samantha says. This is about her previous boyfriend, Eli Mosley. So I think she was girlfriend to Eli Mosley when she was at the same time hooking up with Richard Spencer. But she's the victim here. She mentions that Eli Mosley, Elliot Klein, intended to kill Richard Spencer and take control of the alt-right movement when the time came. Well, guess what? A lot of people joining insular movements have had fantasies about taking control. So having these sort of fantasies is not ipso facto weird. So who is the guy who founded the American Nazi Party, George Lincoln Rockwell? He got shot and killed by one of his followers. So what type of person seeks meaning in extreme politics or conspiracy theories or superstition, right? Someone who lacks social ties. So if you finally find a way to make meaning out of life by getting into radical politics, then you're going to look to see, oh, who's the leader of this new group that I'm joining, and how can I rise to the top? Oh yeah, I'll knock off the top dog, because to even be in this position in the first place, you're highly likely to be antisocial. So not particularly shocking. I saw a photo of Roberta Kaplan the other day. She wasn't repulsive. She's quite fetching. The eyes spaced too close together, the droopy face, the outdated hairdo. What's not to like? I disavow. All right, so what's Samantha telling us? So she was apparently pretty well coached, and she's not getting interrogated because apparently she resides 100 miles away from the trial, so she can't be subpoenaed. So today's developments followed a wild first week in court in which a contentious jury selection went a day longer than expected. Defendants representing themselves in court went off the rails. And the first plaintiff to testify gave an emotional account of being run over by a sports car driven by one of the white supremacists she's suing for damages in the landmark case. Well, if you don't want to get hurt, if you don't want to get beaten, you don't want to get in danger, don't show up at violent events. And so this wasn't like the violence at the Charlottesville just happened from the right. It also happened just as much from the left. So on Tuesday, the plaintiffs played for the court a video deposition. So she wasn't even testifying live. So video deposition of Samantha Froelich, former member of Identity Europa, who was the live-in girlfriend of defendant Elliot Klein through much of 2017. And she was, same time she was with Eli, she was hooking up with Richard Spencer and I don't know who else. So Samantha described Identity Europa's recruitment methods. When you're interviewing someone, make sure that the room is clean, speak with eloquence, don't use racial slurs in public. They wanted to look presentable. It was like being wolves in sheep's clothing. So she was very well coached, and none of the defendants got to question her. So she interviewed hundreds of Identity Europa prospects. She said that the group's members used coded words, phrases, and hand signals instead of explicit racist and violent language and symbols to avoid turning off applicants. See Kyle meant see Kyle. It's usually followed by a subtle Nazi salute towards someone in the distance, was a way to Sieg Heil in plain day. And the OK hand gesture, what is it? Is a way of covertly identifying a fellow white nationalist. Yeah, it's also a way of identifying people who aren't white nationalists but just use the OK symbol. A successful tactic for luring people into Identity Europa was using offensive humor. Coded words, when they say hello, they actually mean goodbye. Shocking. So Eli Mosley intended to kill Richard Spencer and take control of the movement when the time came. So he wasn't going to rush things. He was going to wait until it was time appropriate. Matthew Heimbach wrote, I hate Jews. I actually truly effing hate them. He confirms he did write this, but says he was speaking specifically of the organized Jewish community. Heimbach recites the 14 words on the stand, but we must create, what are the 14 words again? Disavow, not that I, it's a white supremacist slogan, we must secure the existence of our people. Where is it? And look after white children. Gosh, really scary stuff. She said that Eli Mosley, Elliot Klein, worked for a pest control company at the time they were together. Wow, she portrayed him as not having a job. So that was the portrayal she gave in that Antisocial book, by the Antisocial book, by Andrew Marantz, right? She said he didn't have a job. All he wanted to do was be a thought leader. In Antisocial, Online Extremists, Techno-Utopians, and the Hijacking of the American Conversation by Andrew Marantz. So she portrayed Eli Mosley as not having a job, and that's not fair. He did have a job. He worked at a pest control company.